I'm recording this and I will post it on our YouTube channel. The goal for tonight's session on how to host a Canvas is so that you are prepared with all the information and resources that you need to successfully organize and host your own Canvas events. For our agenda, I'll share some canvassing basics, and then the bulk of it will really be the steps for organizing a Canvas before, during, and after. Also, when it comes to jargon, I will use the term canvas. I will say door knocking. You might have also heard it called a walk or a precinct walk. I use those terms somewhat interchangeably, and they all mean basically the same thing. I will wrap up with some additional resources to help you get started. As we talk about canvassing basics, first, I just wanted to talk about Project 100, and you might have heard of this. If you have been canvassing with us, if you have been talking to our organizing team, Michael and his colleagues, this is our program here at the NCDP, basically to make sure we are talking to voters in all 100 counties across our state. We know that in the past, we haven't always gotten to some of those red and even purple counties in the way that we should have. And our chair, Anderson Clayton, our team, we are all very committed to reaching out to our Democratic friends and in rural and swing districts. I'm going to toss this one out to the group. If you'd like to type in the chat, I do have a specific point I want to make with this group about what is a canvas, but also I'd love to hear from you all what you think about canvassing, why it's so important to us and why we put such a big emphasis on it. You want to type in the chat? It's effective. Yeah. We got a shy group or non-typists? You're leaning in, Marcia. Okay, targeting voters in certain areas to persuade. That is a good specific answer. Thank you, Jane. Knocking on Democrats' doors, conversing with them about the issues and our candidates, making a connection. The only edit I would make is we're not just talking to Democrats, right? So we're talking to swing voters, we're talking to undecided voters. And one thing that's a little bit different this year, this cycle, is that we believe that our Republican candidates here in North Carolina are so bonkers that we've seen that a lot of independent voters are really talking about and thinking about and planning to vote for Democrats. So we're not just talking to Democrats, but otherwise, yeah, and getting insights into the issues that are important to our voters, finding common ground. That's good. Yeah, thank you. So my definition that I have here is that it is an organized effort to talk with community members face to face about the issues. So one thing about canvassing is that it is methodical. We have some strategic insight and data analysis that goes into how we run our Canvas programs, some of which we can share with you, some of which we keep pretty close to the vest for strategic reasons, but it is an organized effort and we're face to face with voters. Yeah. Thank you, Marcia. I pressured you into that one. I'm sorry. It's a good answer though. Yes. Okay, so when it comes to why we canvas, we talked about, I think someone put in the chat that it is effective. And we know that it is the most effective way to persuade people, not even just in politics. Like my background before politics was marketing. Face-to-face conversations are very effective. It's hard to scale, which is why we need volunteers. But what I wanted to say specifically for this group is that we kind of have we have three types of canvases, kind of, and a secondary goal. So, and if you've canvassed with us, you've seen this, that we are identifying supporters, We are having persuasive conversations with those swing voters, with undecided voters. And then when we get to the fall, we're really going to be working to get out the vote, GOTV, turn out the vote. So everybody who we have identified as supporters or that we have persuaded to support our candidates in the fall, it's time to make sure they actually still support us and they cast that ballot. Then the secondary goal here with canvassing and with phone bank, with everything we're doing, we're always trying to improve the quality of our data. And every time we knock on the door and it turns out somebody has moved, or we make a phone call and it turns out somehow it's still a fax machine, all of those, even when there are no contacts, that is helping us clean up our data so that again, when we're in that GOTV phase, when we are in October, we are really focused and targeted in our efforts. So our goals here, and a couple of these came up in the chat. We're having conversations about our values and issues with the voter. Part of this, and Project 100's been going on for months. We fully intend for it to be a year-round program and keep going, in the early part of 2025. We don't want to just ask for people's votes on election day or during GOTV. We have heard from voters. I'm a voter, I say it too, that people feel like we're not maybe listening to them. So talking to people throughout the year, having conversations about values and issues, not just saying, please go vote. That's really important to us. One of our goals is to get volunteers trained, experienced, and fully capable of doing this high quality voter turnout, voter contact. And by doing it for the past several months, all the way up through, when we get to GOTV, when we get to October and frankly, we're running out of time, right? That's really crunch time. People like you are trained up. You're trained to host your own events. Our volunteers have been knocking doors and have gotten really good at it, both using the minivan app and having those conversations with voters. So this is all practice, data collection and improvement, showing that we care about our voters. I've kind of hit on this part a little bit, which is that we are improving the quality of our list. We're identifying our supporters so that come October for GOTV, we have really good lists of people to turn out to the polls. Along the way, we are collecting lots of information about people. For example, language preferences. If you knock on a door and someone speaks, for example, Spanish and you do not, we frequently ask you to tag that in minivan. Then when we have Spanish language volunteers, they can do focused phone banks or canvases. And as we get closer to election day, there will be more and more targeted work like that. I recently trained the AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander Caucus, on some specific tactics so that they can target Asian voters across the state to have more specific and deeper conversations. So we're always collecting information about people, about what's important to them, updating contact information, what issues do they care about so we can see what the trends are. All of that rolls into why we canvass. With that said, what do y'all think a canvas captain is? What does it mean and why are you here? Someone who runs canvases, recruiting volunteers, organizing, inform, recruit, coordinates the canvas. Yeah, we've got a couple of tactical, specific answers and a couple of aspirational, philosophical. I love it. Yeah, thank you. So here's the answer I have, and everything in the chat is also accurate. So a canvas captain is the person who hosts, who coordinates, who organizes canvases for other volunteers to attend. It's really important for us as we look to scale up the number of voters that we can talk to between now and election day. If you've attended our canvases, Michael, Brittany, Daniel, Mackenzie, Jabaris, those are our staff members who have been hosting, coordinating canvases. And as volunteers get that experience too, we're so thrilled to have you here so that you can also host and we can grow exponentially. Have more volunteers, have more canvas events, and ultimately talk to more voters. All right, I'm going to pause for a moment. The next section is the steps for organizing a canvas, some things to do before, during, and after. But I want to pause. What questions do you all have? And if you want to type in the chat, or if you want to come off mute or raise your hand, have at it. Marcia, go ahead.
Yeah, we're actually doing a canvas now in our precinct, and some of the volunteers who are uncomfortable with canvassing have asked, what is the evidence that face-to-face canvassing is the most effective way to change minds, get people to vote? And I did a quick lit search on this, and it wasn't as useful as I thought it might be. And I didn't know if there was someone in North Carolina Democrats who actually had that data available.
I have a couple thoughts and then I'm going to ask Michael to weigh in. So one is that some of the research we have is what we call close hold. There's a group that specifically does research for Democratic and
Oh,
candidates.
okay.
And so like, it's not always like public, right? So that's one.
Right.
Number two, I would love for you and anybody on here, if you are organizing a canvas, I do a canvas training for volunteers every Thursday night. I don't know if anyone here has had a chance to attend it, but please send your volunteers to my canvas because I think we talk about some of this in a way that a lot of people, when they leave that training, like I see messages in the chat and they're like, I came into this kind of nervous and now I feel better prepared. So please do that. Third, we and the organizing team, I think, has something they might be able to share. Michael, I know I've seen something from Daniel, but do you have anything specific that we're like able to share?
Daniel might have something, and I can definitely check in with him. And if so, I'd love to send it out to this group sometime this week if we can get our hands on it. But yeah, something that we kind of touched on a little bit in 2022 when we were organizing was, and I think it was a Harvard study that went out that data shows that if we meet people at the door, meet people where they are face to face in person, they are 10 times more likely to go out and vote for you or your candidate. Whereas if we meet them on the phone, they are 4 times more likely to go out, which is still pretty good. But that just really shows us how important it is that we have those face to face conversations with voters on the ground.
Yeah, and we've heard those numbers, but it sure would. I've got people who need hard data. So
Yeah.
if there is some, it would be wonderful.
Yeah, I'll make a note to try
Yeah,
and hunt down some of the stuff that we used in 2022 and send that out to the group this week.
that would be awesome.
Yeah, if you find something in the next 24 to 36 hours, Michael, send it to me and I'll include it in the follow-up email. And maybe I'll include it. I'm doing another round of this training next month. So maybe I'll work it into a slide.
Great.
Thank you, Marcia. Okay. Let us look at the steps for organizing a canvas. So I am going to break this down here in terms of preparing, which is beforehand, hosting, just kind of day of, and then at the end of your canvas or kind of follow-up stuff. When it comes to preparing, couple of things here. First, right off the bat, you got to think of what's your location. What is the day you're going to meet? Where are you going to meet? We always recommend that you first aim for something that's maybe public. Think about something where you're going to have Wi-Fi access for people to download Minivan. I usually recommend like a park, a library, coffee shop. Um, it should be close to where you're planning on knocking your doors. So, don't meet in the suburbs maybe and go knock doors downtown kind of thing. But in the general area, someone's house is certainly fine if they're comfortable with that. But give some thought to where you want to have people meet up. When it comes to supplies, so think about what you need for an in-person event. When I am hosting a canvas, I usually have some voter registration forms that I'll send people out with. We provide campaign literature, which we are currently in the process of reprinting. If you have canvassed with us lately, New Lit is coming. I also what I really love is to have an event scheduled that happens on a repeat basis. So whether it's a canvas you host every month, or you know what, we got 105 days. Let's say you host it twice a month because we're really about to heat up here. I love to have an event that's scheduled for multiple times so that when people show up to Canvas, I can shift them into the next one. Thank you so much for being here. We're doing it again 2 weeks, same place, same time. Let's get you on the list. If you have other types of events, promote that there as well. And when it's hot and heavy campaign season, I actually usually have a big box, like the kind you would get a whole box of printer paper or something. Like I got a box, I keep it in my car. It's got pens, it's got scrap paper, it's got like all the stuff I'm going to need. Fans, water bottles, whatever. So gather the supplies that you're going to need. Help. So I love to ask for help. One, because there's a lot of work to do. Also, it's kind of a low stakes way to get other people committed and involved. And it will give you an opportunity to get a sense of who is really in this, who can you count on, who has the potential to take on a bigger role. But first, I'm going to say, you know, hey, do you have a supply of clipboards? Could you bring some clipboards? Do you have pens? Um, Maybe it's like, the kids' soccer game. Who's bringing the sliced oranges this week? Whatever it is, right? Can you bring donuts? Oh, you're a baker. My gosh, we'd love if you brought some cookies. Asking people for help gets them more engaged and committed. Also, then you're keeping an eye out. Is there someone who could be your co-host, who then maybe turns out to host their own canvases, and we're continuing to grow exponentially? Training. Oh, here, right there. I plugged my own training. So I do the Thursday evening canvas training. I'm averaging, I don't know, 30 people a week for months and months now. People from, like candidates from across the state are sending their volunteers to that training. I encourage people to attend it multiple times if they want. I know Michael and his colleagues, when they are recruiting people for canvases, if there is some reluctance or hesitation, which I understand, if you've never canvassed, it can be intimidating. When there is that reluctance or hesitation, they sign them up. You can sign them up to attend that training session so that people feel more prepared and know what to expect on Saturday. Of course, we're using Minivan. I include a walkthrough of Minivan in that Thursday training. When you're hosting, this is something you should plan to walk through with people. We know some people do want to attend the class multiple times. Some people catch on to the technology a little faster. This is also a fantastic task to delegate to somebody else. I always loved to identify whichever person there and was like, boop, 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 I got the app, no problem. Be like, great, can you help the other people? So that's a good task to keep an eye open for someone to help you with. If you are a county party, we give you access, the state party gives you access to mobilize for free. If you are a precinct leader, you would get that mobilize access from your county party. I don't know if there was anybody here who was like a candidate, in which case you would have your own mobilize, but post your events online. It gives you a link that then you can promote if you have an email newsletter, promote on your social media channels. Also, then you can keep track of who has signed up. If you have Mobilize and we've given you Vote Builder, you can integrate them. So when everybody signs up on Mobilize, it automatically populates in the My Campaign section of Vote Builder. Fantastic, very helpful. And I do want you to promote your event. So one thing that consistently amazes me on campaigns, humbles me on campaigns, is that volunteers come out of the woodwork at the 10th, 11th hour. We know that volunteer capacity, it's like it goes, and then it shoots like way up. Part of that is by promoting your events. So when you have that Mobilize link, people will show up that you don't know yet. And some of them might turn out to be your very best volunteers. So I do encourage you to promote on Mobilize. You might decide there are some ways that you can say, like, I'm going to put the zip code of where we're meeting, but maybe not the exact address. Maybe you'll put something roundabout, say, hey, we're going to meet in downtown Holly Springs or whatever it is. And then in your confirmation calls, you could give people the exact address or in your follow-up emails. But yeah, promote that Mobilize link. And then you do need to think about recruiting. In addition to promotion, which might get people you don't yet know, or like I said, if you have a newsletter or something, hopefully people in your county party will participate. But who else can you recruit? So I have a training on building and managing your volunteer team. I think it's tomorrow night. Build and grow your volunteer team tomorrow night at 6 p.m. I also last night did a session on using the My Campaign section of Vote Builder to think about some recruitment opportunities. So pick up the phone, call people, invite them, send them the link to sign up. We're hosting your canvas. I did mention confirmation calls. I have a volunteer. I have 2 volunteers actually who are making confirmation calls for my trainings. So you may very well have gotten a confirmation call for tonight. The biggest reason we do that is that it does improve our attendance rates. For planning purposes, I usually tell people like expect a 50% no-show rate. Mobilize has automatic reminders via text and email, which helps increase the attendance rate. But that personal phone call, knowing that there's an actual person counting on you and is expecting you to bring the sliced oranges, that's a big deal. So I always recommend that Canvas hosts, or if you're hosting any type of event, you do confirmation calls. And if you have attended my Thursday Canvas training for volunteers, you know that I have taught them to expect to receive a confirmation call. So let's close the loop on that and make those confirms. For hosting, then do you need any printouts? So volunteers generally appreciate having copies of the script, particularly if they haven't canvassed before. You will need to track your list numbers for minivan. I train on that in a Vote Builder class. So if that is not a meaningful phrase to you, if that jargon is bumpy, reach out, let me know. Maybe you have a data specialist in your county party or precinct. I mentioned voter registration forms, reshifting forms, a sign-in sheet, things like that are some things that usually like the night before, some of those you will print out like the sign-up sheet the night before. for those confirmation calls, for canvassing specifically, I like to try to help people download Minivan and create their action ID, their username and password. Again, if you attended the Thursday session, I email people directly the link to download from the Apple Store or Google Play. It's handy to have those to send to people to just make it a little bit easier for them. Basically, my mindset here is the more people you can get prepped on Minivan on your confirm calls, the fewer you have to get prepped when you're in person, so things will go a little smoother. Ask volunteers to bring a friend. We are generally knocking in pairs. And if somebody brings a friend with them, then right there, you've kind of doubled their capacity. Maybe they don't have somebody who wants to canvas, but maybe they're willing to walk around with them for a couple hours. Excuse me, I remind everybody to bring what they need to be comfortable. Different times a year, this list is a little different, but it always is like a fully charged phone, comfortable sneakers, you know, sunscreen, windbreaker, ball cap, all that stuff, whatever they might need. And I also use this as an opportunity to start getting a sense of their interests and capabilities. I am always keeping an eye out for who I can tap as a co-host, who has maybe some other special skills that they want to contribute to the team. Maybe they're great on the phone and I'm going to say like, hey, you know what? Our conversation's fantastic. How would you feel about being the person to make these confirmation calls for me for my next event? Delegate everything and coach and train people how to do it well. But I'm always looking for who else can pitch in. Okay, for your day of checklist, you will welcome your volunteers when they show up. I usually get there half an hour before I tell my guests to get there. And it depends a little, like maybe when it's closer to the election and I've gotten into a rhythm and I've got my well-supplied box in the trunk of my car, maybe it's 15 minutes, but there's always somebody who's there very early. So I try to be there half an hour early. I'm going to welcome people. I've got my sign-in sheet. If somebody's not on the sign-in sheet, I'm going to get their information, help them with Minivan and Action ID, delegating that to the first person who comes along who shows any inkling of interest in it. I might hand out copies of the script, train on Minivan as needed, and also role play, practice the script. So as we're getting closer and closer to election day, we probably have volunteers who are experienced. You might find that you have like half the group's experienced and half is novices. So I might, for the experienced group, get them their list numbers and get them going right away and have some people hang back if they need a little bit of training. I give Minivan numbers when people show up, not before. It can get messy. You know what, Crystal? People open the doors when it's raining. I mean, I know that like this is one of the things where I will say, you know your community better than I do. What I do know is that people open the doors more when it's raining. And it might depend on if it's a torrential downpour or you know, sprinkles. You'll probably have a good day. You'll get wet, but you'll have a good day. So anyhow, so I do think having people practice the script. I personally, like until I say the script out loud a couple of times, I'm nervous. Once I say it out loud a couple of times, I feel better. I am the kind of person who does not appreciate a role play in the moment. It makes me feel very awkward. But I also know from experience that it works. So do that script training and practice. And then you will give people their Minivan list numbers. Ooh, Michael, I'm curious. Are you handing out? Maybe I misunderstood Jane's question. Volunteers get their list numbers when they show up. Are you saying, Michael, you give it to the hosts?
Oh, yes. Good flag. I may have also misunderstood, but either way. So yeah, usually a day or two before the canvassing event. I was going to say every Thursday, but y'all might decide to do canvassing on Wednesday or on Tuesday or on Sunday. But usually a day or two before the event, we'll have list numbers and turf that we will send you the material so that way you can print it out and have it ready for the volunteers when they come on the actual day.
Oh, Jane. Okay.
Yeah, and Jan, you're in Polk County, right? Yeah, yeah. So I know y'all have a lot of volunteers also that go out even outside of just the day that y'all canvas. That's I find that, you know your county best. I've encouraged some counties to do that if that's how their volunteers typically work, but definitely check in on those volunteers like every few days to make sure that they're good, they're getting the canvas list completed, and in a timely manner.
Thank you, Michael. Let's talk about the end of shift. Excuse me, I'm getting scratchy here. So I always recommend that you have your canvassers return to the launch location, return to the starting point. This is another time where I don't know how you do it, Michael, but like I would go knock some doors on my own, but then I would try to come back. I might knock for an hour and then come back so that when the volunteers are done, I want to be there to greet them. I saw Michael nodding. Okay, good. Couple things to do there. Sync their minivan data. And Jane, you were mentioning areas where internet might not be that great. That's one of the reasons. And you sounds like you have a system, but I encourage people to have a coffee shop, a library, something like that as your starting location because they usually have Wi-Fi. So have people sync up that data because we don't want to lose all the valuable information that we have just learned about voters. Debrief. I usually find that people, I don't know, 80% of people come back from canvassing and they're buzzing. If they've never done it before, they're like, oh my gosh, I thought this was going to be different than it was. I had fun. Everybody's going to have 2, 3 good conversations on the doors. I like to tap into that enthusiasm. I'm going to ask people, what was the best conversation that you had today? When I can, I'm going to celebrate successes. As a host, looking for trends and issues that are coming up repeatedly in the community that you can flag up to your organizer, like Michael. Show appreciation, thank them, and go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of touch real quick on the debrief part. I know a lot of counties, at least in my region, earlier on in the cycle, we didn't always do a debrief where we brought people back. And I know that there's folks on here that, y'all haven't always done a debrief or seen a debrief in the past. Definitely during and as we lead up to GOTV to get out to vote in September and October. I think it's very important that we do try and have those debriefs because we could be reshifting those volunteers. We can be getting answering any questions. Sometimes there's crucial notes that those volunteers will forget after a few days, and you want those notes right then and there. The other thing that I would say on how to draw people to come back, because in the past when we had paper lists, it was simple as bring my clipboard back, right? And we don't quite have that. If you still take out a clipboard for voter registration and stuff, definitely you can still use that. But I like to try and get my candidates to there for the debrief as opposed to the kickoff if possible. So that'll kind of draw people back, come back from pizza, listen to our local candidates that are going to be running for school board or even all the way up to our council of state members. I think those are good ways to encourage people to come back to have that debrief. Thanks, Christy.
Yeah, no, that's super clever. I love that. I haven't heard that idea before, and that's fantastic. I do love that. I was in a running club for a while, and when we finished our run, they would have donuts and hot coffee. And you finished that run and you showed back up in the end. So yeah, I love that. Thank you. And to what Michael was saying, here we go, reshift. When those people come back and they're buzzing and they're excited, I'm going to have my list of upcoming events in my hand, and I'm going to tap into that enthusiasm right at the moment and get them signed up for the next event. And Jane, that's a fantastic point as well for candidates to hear what we heard on the doors. I have a couple notes that I recently added here. So if you are also a Vote Builder administrator, got a couple of notes for you. If you are not the Vote Builder administrator, but there's somebody in your county who is, or you're tapping into, Michael or one of the organizers, just ask. Want to make sure these two things are happening. Number one, committing our data. This is something that happens on the back end of Vote Builder. So we tell our volunteers to sync their data. That kind of puts it in a bit of a holding pattern within Vote Builder. So for it to get to us, and we need it, there's a step that happens on the back end in Vote Builder to commit the data. Now, Michael and our other organizers are probably helping you with that, but wanted to flag that it's really important to commit our data and that you might hear that phrase. The other item, again, a Vote Builder item, if you are an administrator, is to close your shifts. That's the phrase we use when we go into Vote Builder or mobilize and indicate everyone who did show up to an event or who did not. And I was doing the training last night on managing volunteer teams using Vote Builder. And there's some really clever lists you can pull to recruit volunteers that depend on accurate information about when they have attended events or not. So it's something our staff does. I do it after all of my trainings. Closing the shift is the expression, is the jargon that we use for that. And this is the starting point for how you do that process. If you're interested, if you need to do it and you don't know how, I can send you the Vote Builder slides. But important to mark who did attend and who did not. I'm going to share some additional resources and start to wind down here a little bit. But before I do that, are there other questions? Oh, Marcia, were you asking?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask, if we're gonna do kind of project 100 type of canvassing and all, should we still be going through say our county folks, or should we just go directly to Michael or whoever's in the mid-region? I'm in Orange County.
I'm going to kick that straight to Michael.
Yeah. All of your regional organizing directors, and by the way, Marcia, Orange County, I believe you will be with
Mackenzie?
Daniel Branch.
Yeah.
I believe it's Daniel. Yeah. And
Yeah.
all of us regional organizers, we've been pretty trying to stay in good contact with all of the county chairs or somebody on the ground in the county. And now folks that are in here, that y'all have stepped up to be our canvas leaders. Then you're going to also be hearing a lot more from us, and you'll be communicating with us more as well. Let me back up and make sure I answer your question. I'm sorry, I got distracted by a pop-up on my screen.
Not really.
Can you re-ask it? I
Yeah,
apologize.
no, if our precinct says, we want to do a canvas in a week.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
whatever, who do we reach out to first now?
Yeah, so you're going to reach out to, I would connect with your county chair.
Okay,
So,
perfect.
and then you would want to connect with Daniel Franch, to put together the
Okay,
details. And yeah, there you go.
okay.
Thank you, Michael. Let me share a couple of these additional resources here, and then we'll have time for some more questions. And Michael, if you have some of these links you can drop in the chat, that's great. I will also include all these links, and you'll have these slides in the follow-up email that I'll send here in a day, assuming we don't continue to have breaking news every minute of every day.
Yeah.
So we do have a Canvas guide. This is a 2-page document. It's a resource for Canvas hosts. It's very similar to what we covered today, just condensed and without my face. I mentioned the Canvas training that I do every Thursday, and the agenda covers why canvassing matters. I have a slightly different, answer for volunteers. We went into a little bit more depth today. I will share door knocking best practices, so tips for having conversations with swing voters, and do the minivan walkthrough and demonstration. I like to talk about this concept, which is a training concept. I do, we do, you do. And this is about, like, you have attended a Canvas before, and maybe say Michael was the Canvas host. So Michael hosted the Canvas. Maybe the next time you co-host with Michael, so that the third time you can host on your own. That's kind of the I do, we do, you do guide. And think about how now you can cascade that. So if you're ready to host your own Canvas, fantastic. If you want to tag team with someone, to get your feet under you, ask the county party, ask one of our organizers. And then again, be thinking of who you can tap to co-host with you, so that then they can go on to host on their own. And that's really these next 105 days, that scaling of our voter outreach, which relies on the scaling of our voter program. That is what we are all focused on. So thank you so much for being here. I have just a couple more things to share. This is the checklist for hosting a Canvas. Get trained, post something on Mobilize and start recruiting. Shift your Canvas volunteers into that Thursday training if you want. Rinse, repeat. This is the to-do list for hosting. This is my note to stop recording, because now I'm going to share information that gets stale with time.